So, let me see if I got this straight, folks. As I said in my review and everything, let me see if I got this straight. Let me see if I got this straight. In my overall review, I've mentioned this. In my videos, I've talked about this. Well, actually, my overall review as well as the Mega Man review. Let's see if I got this straight. There's a possible third crossover happening. Now, as I mentioned in my 4-part video overall review of World Tonight, yes, it was 4 parts, and I do apologize. As well as I said in my long-ass wall of text, as some people like to call it, that you can find at the Sega forums in the section of in the cartoons and comics section, in the subsection called, on the topic section called Threading of Worlds Unite, or Threading of Worlds. And again, you can find that in the cartoons and comics section on the Sega forums. As well as you could find it in the forums at SatayamSonic.com, as well as Saturday Morning Sonic forums, and at DeviantArt, at my DeviantArt page, which is BVW1979, and some of the Sonic related groups there. Let me see if I got this straight. Let me see if I got this straight. We have a possible third crossover happening that centers around a nexus. A nexus, if you will. And basically, for some that may not know what a nexus is, when it comes to scientific sci-fi terms, it's basically like the epicenter, the prime center, the prime verse, if you will, of everything that you have seen. In other words, in fact, let me look it up for a second. In fact, like I said, let me look it up for a second. But basically, from what I understand, it's more like, things are at the epicenter. You're at the epicenter of everything that you have seen, everything you have read, everything you know. Hold on for a sec. I apologize for the silence there. Here we go. It says basically, this is the definition that Google has for nexus. A connection or series of connections linking two or more things. And they give an example, the nexus between industry and political power. Another term is a connected group or series, the central and most important point or place. Here's that third one. The central and most important point or place. Basically the nexus of all this activity. So in other words, when it comes to comic terminology, if you will, and it comes to the possible third crossover, it's going to deal with everything being centered in one area. It's going to be centered in one place or area. I mean, they used let's see what they used here. They used the nexus of all this activity was the disco, whatever that means. But basically, they're indicating, but basically by the indication of this, is if this last term or this last definition relates. Hold on for a second. Sorry about that. Sorry about that. That's the one problem about doing a video like this, in this kind of area. You don't know what's coming up the door or anything. But anyway, if the last definition of nexus is any indication to the possible third crossover, then what it's saying is there's going to be a central and most important point in place. In other words, the third crossover is going to be taking place in the epicenter of all this activity. In other words, a possible prime universe. But the only question like right here, the dictionary definition, it says, a nexus is a central link or connection. If you happen to be at the nexus of something, you are right in the middle of it, like standing in the middle of an intersection. There you go. So basically what it sounds like is the third crossover is going to deal with a place, is going to be set in a place that is at the center of all this activity. And obviously if it's the boom world, it's the boom universe, that would be a surprise. Honestly, it would be. Because if it was Sonic's world, that would still be in pieces, or slowly trying to get put back together. So you need an epicenter. In Mega Man's world, maybe having some after effects, perhaps. But on the other hand, it could be the central point as well. But what exactly is going to be the central point in all this? Where's all this activity centered at? Where's all this activity going to head towards? And that is a good question. Like I said in the last video, that is a good question. I even said it in the text. We have no idea how they're going to get to this point, but it sounds like what they're planning is to get. What they're planning is to basically get to a point that all this can be wrapped up. A good example could be, let's see. A good example could be, how do I put this? Trying to look. Could be Back to the Future. A good example is Back to the Future. All of them were connected to a nexus, if you will. All of them were building up to something, to where everything was going to come to an end. That's a good example in its own right. Well, that didn't work. But anyway, that's sort of a good example of how to build to a nexus or build to a analogy. You know, the Indiana Jones movies are good ones too, the original Indiana Jones ones, like Raiders of the Lost Ark, Temple of Doom, and Last Crusade. That was the original trilogy. They were all building up to something. You were trying to get to the center of something, trying to get to the epicenter of something. That's sort of what it means. Well, not exactly through Nexus, but you get the idea. You kind of get the idea, but the point is, what I'm trying to say is, you know, the point is, this is something that none of us have any idea of how they're going to get to. None of us have any idea. I mean, when you look at the story arcs, excuse me, and the main story arc that's going to remain after Mega Man goes on hiatus, the question is going to be, how do you get to the nexus for that third crossover with just that one story arc? And I have a couple of ideas of how it's going to be and what's going to be involved. Now, we've already had both Wily and Eggman, you know, we've had both Wily and Eggman be the villains of the first ones. We've had Sigma be the second one. The question is, who would be worthy enough from the Sonic side of things, because that's obviously where we're going back to. Who could be the most worthy one? Now you could say, well, you could go with Eggman again. Okay, fine. But what would the point be? You could say, well, who else would there be? You can go with Nagus. That's a good option. Or you could go with another option, which is Dark Gaia. Think about it this way. Dark Gaia is supposed to be a very powerful being in the comics. So what better villain or villainess or whatever gender Dark Gaia is to have, what better villain or villainess to be that be that threat that gets us to that nexus. Now you might also say, well, there's other options out there. You got Eggman Nega, if you will, and that's true. You got Eggman Nega, and that's not how I'm saying. I'm not saying it the way people think. So it's Eggman N-E-G-Y. You know, I mean N-A-G. It's Eggman N-E-G-A. Eggman Nega, like negativity. Eggman Nega. So we'll just call him Eggman Negativity or Negative Eggman. Yeah, we'll just go like that, make it easier. You got Negative Eggman from Blaze's World as an option. And then you got that lizard character. Can't think of his name right now, from Boom. That could be an option. But then also I know some people might say, well, you know, Dark Guy is good, but you have these other options of Negative Eggman, the lizard guy from Boom. And oh, by the way, you also have Black Doom and the Black Army. From Shadow? Seriously? Okay, that might be a possibility. But you know, as great as those options are, I think the most obvious choice is going to be Dark Gaia. I hate to say that. I think it's going to be Dark Gaia, and here's why. You're building up to this situation, and if you wrap it up before this, then hey, it's got to be something different, right? It's got to be a different threat. You might have to rely on Eggman. But it's got to be a threat that's so big that you're going to have to basically substitute 6 issues out of either a 12 issue or 20, out of a 1 year or 2 year, out of a 1 year 12 issue or 2 year 24 issue subscription to dedicate to it from both Universe and Sonic. Unless you have Mega Man come back at that time or before then you're going to have to again go with four issues out of 4 issues out of the 3 comics. Because if not, you're going to have to go with 6 issues each out of the 2 main Sonic comics if you're going to do it. But again, the question is, what is the planning stage? And I'm just speculating and giving my thoughts and opinion on how I believe Ian Flynn's going to get there. How Ian Flynn, some of the other writers and the creative staff, how they're going to get there, what's going to lead towards it, how it's going to be built up. I'm just giving speculation. I mean, basically, that third definition of things being at a central point, that's probably the best definition you got when it comes to this possible, if not definite, third crossover that's going to evolve around this. I mean, why show a planet with that purple mist around it? It looks like either the Boom world or Sonic's world, but Sonic's world would be a little bit in pieces, wouldn't it? Well, maybe slowly getting back together, I don't know. But why have that purple mist around that world, and you're having sticks hint at the fact that a Nexus, that everything could be connected to some Nexus? I'm just saying, to me, it's just too obvious that we're going to get that third crossover. You know, it's too obvious to me. It's too obvious to anybody else. But again, the question is, and I know I sound like I'm repeating myself here, and I apologize, but the question is, how do we get to that third crossover? How do we build up to it if we're going to be down by the end of the year to 2 comics? I mean, you could slowly start a build maybe in the final 3 issues of Mega Man before you put it on hiatus. It is for who knows how long, hopefully not too long. And maybe you can hint at it a little bit in the Boom comics, even when you transition them over to the Sonic Super Special magazine, as well as maybe Digest, slowly, hint at whatever you got planned to get to that point. But to me, you've got to do something as soon as possible, probably before the year's out or at the beginning of 2016, to let people know this is happening and this is how big and how important and how event making and how big of an event, I should say, that this is going to be. And you also got to give some indication how it might shake things up, if you will. And you got to basically let us have an idea of who might be the villain that causes this. And to me, the most logical choice, if you're going back to the Sonic side of things, is Dark Gaia. Like I said, if you want to go in the Boom direction and get that lizard guy, that's fine too. And of course you got those other options like Negative Eggman from Blaze's world, the Black Army, Black Doom if you will. But again, I think the most logical choice would have to be Dark Gaia, because that is the main continuity, that is the main story arc, that is the main event story arc you are working on right now. So that would be, to me, the obvious option and direction for a villain when it comes to this third crossover. And again, you have to give hints. You got to give some indication. You really got to let us know of what's going to be happening, how we're going to get there, so that when we do get there, we'll be prepared and ready for whatever gets shoved up, for whatever gets thrown our way. So to me, that's what I think needs to be done. And as far as characters go, I think in all honesty, hold on for a sec.